Well, World Youth Day is over, and you saw the bald loser who was playing bad music at the festival, and the dweebs, the youthful dweebs that actually showed up to World Youth Day. That is bad enough, right? But according to Archbishop Vigano, Parish Orphans and Retrogrades, World Youth Day belies something even more sinister than just over the hill bald dweebs and their under the hill younger acolytes, dweebs in their early 20s. It betrays upcoming synodal schism. And Archbishop Vigano, who started out giving enumerated like epistles in this time of the year in 2018. Remember how exciting that was? He got a little bit trigger happy, did a few too many. Everyone stopped paying attention. But I've started paying attention again to some of the things he's saying in recent months, Parish Orphans and Retrogrades. And I'm here to break it down for you. He has some good analysis, particularly on four main issues. First off, what is betrayed by World Youth Day? How is the upcoming schism, according to his prognostications, foresignaled, prefigured by what happened at World Youth Day? Number two, in a recent 65th anniversary special edition of the Spanish Catholic magazine Nueva Vida, Francis expresses false surprise at his 2013 election. I'm going to talk about what kind of proof that is, that something sinister is going on. I think he gave this he gave this interview connected to the World Youth Day. So that's number two. Number three, Francis also made a comment connected to the prospect of Vatican III, where he says, Vatican II hasn't even been implemented yet. You think this is bad? It is. It's going to get way worse before we consider Vatican II implemented. Yeah, we'll do Vatican III eventually, but only after we bring the full bore, the full set of ramifications of the destruction of Vatican II upon the Church. These aren't dense quotes, obviously. And then the fourth aspect of this Vigano interview, where he talks about the upcoming synodal synod schism, is the goal work, the methodology, the spycraft, the statecraft of Francis, who Vigano always refers to as Bergoglio. Just a quick note on, because this was bothering Steph, I was reading aloud the excellent interview that's published on LifeSite News yesterday by Vigano, together with the reporter he always works with, Vaticanista Aldo Maria Valli. When people want to, because we're all passive-aggressive at the pontiff, want to take a dig at him and call him Bergoglio or Jorge Mario Bergoglio. I don't do that. I'm going to read some passages in the interview where Vigano does that. I don't find it particularly cutting edge. Where are you guys at on this, Parish Orphans and Retrogrades? When people call a pope by his last name, you're actually allowed to do it. So it doesn't signify quite the scalding critique that people think it represents. I don't know. I'm not big on it, but I don't really care. It's just one of those leitmotifs of late 2023 AD, 10 years into the Francis pontificate, and things have only gotten stranger and stranger. There's a concept of the closer we are to the end, the more things accelerate, which Vigano himself and Vali will talk about, and I think some of their points are interesting. We'll get to that in a second. We'll get to all four of these points about World Youth Day. The balding fruitcake who was, I guess he's a priest, acting as DJ, playing just some of the worst house music you've ever heard. And there are a bunch of sexually frustrated dweebs in their early 20s who are dancing around to it. I don't get the World Youth Day thing. Is this more World Youth Day?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Could we see some of that? Let's get a full sampling of what this magician has to offer. Oh, he's wearing his Roman collar there. Can we maximize that?
Yeah, let me get.
Let's go.
Let's take a look at the fresh hell that is coming out of Portugal. Here we go.
I mean, can you imagine thinking this is?
I'm embarrassed for you, for everyone involved. Imagine thinking this is like really amazing music and super fun. Look at the guy with the camera. Oh, dancing. Look at the youths dancing and jumping. Frivolity. Oh, look at that. The hype guy. Amazing. Yes. Oh, yes, look at that. Oh, whoa! I like the fist, pumps and the jumping. Yep.
Porque único es el latido de Dios por ti. Que sean días en los que grabemos en el corazón que somos amados como somos, no como quisiéramos ser, como somos ahora. Y este es el punto de partida de la JJ, pero sobre todo el punto de la partida de la vida. Chicos y chicas, somos amados como somos, sin maquillaje. ¿Entienden esto? Todos. En la iglesia hay lugar para todos. Padre, pero yo soy un desgraciado, soy una desgraciada. Hay lugar para mí, hay lugar para todos. Todos juntos, cada uno en su lengua. Cada uno en su lengua, repita conmigo, todos. No se oye, otra vez, todos. Piensa en la iglesia.
Oh, look at the free-formed, whimsical dancing on stage.
La única oportunidad, el único momento que es lícito mirar a una persona de arriba abajo es para ayudar a levantarse. En la vida nada es gratis. Todo se paga. Solo hay una cosa gratis, el amor.
So we're going to talk about what Archbishop Vigano has said about the portendings of World Youth Day. In just a minute, we're going to do that in a second, but I would just remark this. Here's like top priority. Everyone, the purpose of life is to get into heaven and to, as a matter of religious justice, give to God what's His. So we're created to worship Him. That's the good life. Young people should skip the sinful, the life of sin that so many fall into in their 20s and go straight to worship of God the proper way. But if you're going to blaspheme God, as they were doing, religious hippies all over Twitter talking about the plastics and the blasphemous containment of the hosts at World Youth Day, if you're going to be playing that whatever that is called music in relation to, I guess, Jesus, they even had devil's horns and were dressed up as witches saying it's Halloween, but it's not anywhere near Halloween. We are in the midst of August. If you're gonna blaspheme Jesus anyway, so you're not hitting this highest life, have some of these young men heard about drugs or women? I mean, if you're gonna not be living, if you're gonna be blaspheming our Lord, I think the next best thing is like a life of Augustinian sin, right? I mean, like, that's not advisable. We never admonish people to go do that, but why not at that point? I guess I think the worst is when you're blaspheming the Lord. You're at a dorky,
Rave?
utterly, Novus Ordo rave. Is that the only way you could put this? A kind of clown mass. It's the worst of all worlds. You have a bunch of nerdy, sexually frustrated youths that don't have the true sanctifying grace of, the true sacraments and sacramentals to sustain them. And yet they're just in this, it's kind of the worst of all worlds. A horse made by committee. This is sort of not walking on the left or the right side of the road, but walking somewhere in the middle and getting the squish just like a grape. Like Mr. Miyagi says, I don't understand it. And I don't understand World Youth Day or the kind of person who attends World Youth Day or ever wants to attend World Youth Day. But it looks really bad. I'll just say that it looks bad. It's badly done. It's like old men trying to do hip, cool things.
What's up, fellow kids?
What's up, fellow kids? They're not good at approximating that. They don't even know what the really cool youths are doing, and they don't have access to any really cool youths because they just have a bunch of dweebs that actually attend this event. Look at that. Very strange. So don't take my advice. I mean, go straight to living a life of holiness. But if not, why not? If you're going to blaspheme the Lord and upset him anyway, why not have some actual fun? I don't know. That's just, I'm in a weird mood today. But let's say this much. Well, first off, like this video, subscribe to the channel, please. We need your help. We need you to be a subscriber if you're a regular viewer here on Rules for Retrogrades. Secondly, go to realestateforlife.org and get your family from a blue state to a red state. We are Mississippi evangelists. We have a friend visiting right now, and we're just trying to get all of the blue staters we can out to a red state like Mississippi. It makes things so nice in the personal life, even as the world decomposes and the sky falls. Thirdly, if you want to support this channel, go to timothyjgordon.com, and you can either support us on Locals or Subscribestar. If you want to support Steph and I by donation, go to donate on that page. We really appreciate it. So here's what's up. 4 aspects to this Vigano interview, and I think they're particularly insightful as we wend toward October and the Synod on Synodality. World Youth Day was, as always, in early August. You saw some clips from it there. It portends bad stuff. For one thing, James Martin S.J. was there, and he said that there's no airtight proof that God exists, which is that's horrible. That's characteristically horrible. He said that at World Youth Day. There's no airtight proof God exists. He's one of the leaders. You also know what he stands for. I won't say that. Then there's this 65th special anniversary edition of the Spanish Catholic magazine, Nueva Vida, where Francis, in connection to World Youth Day, says a bunch of really bad and concerning and harrowing stuff. Like Vatican II hasn't even begun to be implemented yet, even with all the destruction. The wake of that council is already sown. We'll only get to Vatican III once the ground is leveled, essentially. He expresses false surprise at his 2013 election. I want to talk about that for a little period of time. And then, of course, the 4th aspect of this Vigano interview with Aldo Mari Valli up on LifeSite is that there's a methodology to the way that Francis sets his goals, and you can see it at work in World Youth Day. So let me read you some sections of this interview. The article on LifeSite came up yesterday. It's called Archbishop Vigano World Youth Day has confirmed Bergoglio's plan to provoke a schism. Let's prepare ourselves for a crescendo of unprecedented provocations. Time bombs ready to explode in order to sow disorientation, confusion, and division. And you know Archbishop Vigano, from his other epistles in times past, has a florid streak. He likes to spin yarns, and poetic ones at that. So I'm going to skip around some because he's a great thinker, but sometimes he's a little flowery for me. This is the third part of a series of interviews that Volley did with Vigano. It's up on LifeSite as of today. It went up yesterday. You can check out LifeSite's coverage of parts 1 and 2 in the days immediately preceding yesterday on the 5th and the 6th. Volley starts out this interview, this part of the extended interview, by saying, "Your Excellency, we often say motus in fine velocior, which means movement is faster toward the end." Movement is faster toward the end. I like this. About Francis's attitude aimed at liquefying what little remains of Catholic doctrine and espousing the thought of the world. The most recent news confirms this, including yet another one of his interviews. What is your assessment? That's a new verb for the destruction wrought by Francis. We've had every kind of verb, and liquefying is a brave new image. He responds thus: World Youth Day, celebrated this year in Lisbon, Portugal.
Sorry.
Thank you. Has confirmed the acceleration of Bergoglio's. I already warned you about this. He says Bergoglio to kind of dig back. You get passive aggressive, I understand.
I'm just gonna start playing that music randomly throughout, like.
Did he make that song, that balding DJ priest?
Let's hear.
They're bald. He's not balding. It's good stuff. So there's that. At least there's that much, right? All right. So World Youth Day has confirmed the acceleration of Bergoglio's plan to provoke a schism. His latest appointments, which are provocative to say the least, the statements of the newly appointed cardinals, which are representative of Francis's agenda in a conceptually concise way, and it's fair to say they're representative of Pope Francis. All of which confirm the Bergoglian revolution. He puts that in quotes, but he doesn't tell us where he's pulling the term Bergoglian revolution from. The presence of James Martin at World Youth Day to propagandize the acceptance of that ideology, I won't read the letters, by young people. Bergoglio, Pope Francis's recent statement to a person representative of the last of those 4 letters that we shall not name, like Lord Voldemort, like Transformers. God loves us as we are. Go ahead and do your, Optimus Prime, Decepticons, Autobots transforming kind of thing. The only thing missing, according to Vigano, was an interview in which the Argentine confessed to an editorial staff of genuflecting and cheerleading journalists to complete the picture. Now, I think he really did that. I don't know why he said it was missing. I think he did that not at World Youth Day. So the genuflection comes from, it was August 4th. He claimed to be a victim of the Holy Spirit, which is Francis's terms, and he launched yet another vicious attack on traditionalists. He calls holy priests blessed Imeldas, and the time for Vatican III is not yet ripe. So he did do, I don't know why Vigano said the only thing missing from this litany of crimes or whatever was an interview in which the Argentine confessed to an editorial staff of genuflecting and cheering journalists to complete the picture. I mean, he did that. So maybe it's a mistranslation. I don't get the phraseology there. The adoring tone of the interview is beyond embarrassing, according to Vigano, which for someone who claims to detest hypocrisy and servility would sound tragic if it were not so grotesque. the cloying obsequiousness of the journalists went so far as to say that Bergoglio was like a country priest accustomed to treating everyone equally, or like a woman who from dawn to dusk goes out on her way to support a family. The abject lyricism of Vida Nueva, the Spanish magazine, however, had the drawback of exposing the false spontaneity of the interviewee's words. False spontaneity, we're going to talk about that turn of phrase in a second, which were, in fact, carefully dropped like time bombs waiting to detonate. So what does he mean by false spontaneity? It's a bit like trying to read a magazine article over the air, like I just did, right? You want to read it in a way that's interesting, in a way that's fluent as well. But you're not claiming, whenever I read a magazine piece, I'm not claiming to you guys, the listeners or viewers, that I am reciting this from my memory. If it were false spontaneity, I would have memorized lines, but be claiming that they were non-memorized, that I was riffing. And the reason this is so important to a mafioso kind of agenda as it unfolds, the reason that it's so important to the theme of what Vigano is saying Francis is doing, is because of the heart of what synodality is, synodalita. What is it? It's supposed to be a kind of democratization of the church wherein the Pope, even though he has a kind of plenary executive authority to over doctrine and discipline, non-reformable doctrine, he wants to listen to what his bishops are saying from around the world, and he will be informed by all of these as a kind of set of advisors, as if they're all in the College of Cardinals. And then he'll say, yes, I'm going to use my plenary authority to give you a synthesized, hybridized concept that, mashes all of the things, all the truisms that I heard from all of my confidants around the world in the episcopate. That would be a veritably spontaneous reduction of the, pontifical office. And it would be, even though we don't like it much, us trads, it would be an actual use of the papal throne. To say, hey, I can do whatever I want to do. I can listen to whatever advisors I want, right? That would be synodality at work. But the note that keeps coming up in this song, according to Vigano, and I think he's right, is that it's a false spontaneity. In other words, the 2014 Extraordinary Synod in October, the 2015 Ordinary Synod in October, both had proof positive demonstrations in the midst of those two synods that there was a pre-written relatio, midterm report, and a pre-written final document. And that the process that was supposed to be informing that document in real time was merely kabuki theater, was merely pretextual, was a pretext for the process of democratization, which I don't even think is good in the first place, but it's at least what Francis is claiming. It's the mantle he's clinging to. Well, that's a false spontaneity because he's not actually listening to any one of the bishops. He is acting in accord with some agenda, which I think has been set by some elites. A lot of them, I think, are at home in Davos at the WEF. He's very close with those people. I think the agenda is coming not from the spontaneous synodal process, not that that would be good, but that would at least be sort of Catholic in a modern way. I think it's coming wholly extrinsically from outside the church, and there's been a lot of evidence of that as far back as 2014, 2015. Vigano says that it's smoking gun evidence. So, yeah, that's now, how is World Youth Day evidentiary of this process? What's up? Oh, you just have the goofy music going the whole time?
I was going to start it up again.
You can do. Oh, let's see. Oh,
Here we go.
these are the dorks that are. I mean, they traveled for this. I'd be mad if this was going on in my backyard, and these guys traveled across the world for it.
I'm mad it's happening on my screen right now.
Yeah.
I was just gonna keep just pushing that in.
Thank you. That's very good of you. Look at that. Is the guy like 60? Look how he's getting into it. That's so odd. How many of these people could actually be linearly arrow-like, not bent? I don't. It just can't be a very high number. But yeah, so I think it's important to say the reason that World Youth Day exposes all this is what Vigano is saying. He kind of dances around it. He dances back and forth between talking about Francis's Vida Nueva interview, which was adjacent to World Youth Day, and insinuating in kind of florid language things about World Youth Day, and including some of the elements of World Youth Day. But I think what he's really saying, if you want my commentary, is that the fact that you have James Martin there, saying that there's no hard proof of God's existence. The fact that everything at World Youth Day seems to be a dress rehearsal for the themes and doctrines that are going to be unveiled in 2.5 months' time at the Synod on Synodality. That's kind of prima facie evidence, right? You combine that with the Catholic news of the last month, the elevation of Tucho Fernandez as the CDF, or what they call the DDF prefect, the statements that Tucho Fernandez made in conjunction with his new boss, his new mandate, which is to say that the job of the Holy Office is not to guard against error, it is to explore theologically. And that it was immoral for the Holy Office in times past to try to hunt heresy. In Vigano's mind, this isn't World Youth Day stuff, but World Youth Day is chronologically proximate, sufficiently chronologically proximate to each other so as to be adjacent. So he could just kind of lump these things in together, and that's what he does. And he says, all of them smack of this, you guessed it, false spontaneity. World Youth Day is wrought of false spontaneity. You know, like the old dudes who probably aren't arrow-like unbent in the church since Vatican II, they're like, their dream, I'll say that. I don't want to be gross. Their fantasy is to be surrounded by like young teens or maybe middling-aged teens, boys who think they're so cool when they do their pathetic boomer-like DJing or whatever, that there's a spontaneity of action, a spontaneity of discipleship, a spontaneity of synodality that's engendered by their force of character or something like that. And that never happens, right? No legitimate young people that have anything going on are interested in any of it, right? Unfortunately, the young people that have anything going on tend to be very secular, and they're going to be caught nowhere near World Youth Day. And then there's a very small cadre of Catholic people that are kind of the best of both worlds. They know Roman Catholicism is the truth, the salt and the light of the world. And true Roman Catholicism has nothing to do with World Youth Day or James Martin or Tucho Fernandez or Pope Francis. Whether you call him Bergoglio or not, real Catholicism has nothing to do with his agenda. There's an oppositional force, and nary the twain shall meet. I think it's that simple. So I don't disagree with this first of 4 themes raised by Vigano, where he says, look, World Youth Day is basically prima facie evidence of an upcoming synodal schism. What is the prima facie? It's the false spontaneity, which is hugely central to Francis's goal-setting typology. Now, also false spontaneity, not in our present, but 10 years ago, 10 and change, at the election of Francis. Let us see what Vigano says about that. From this interview in Nueva Vida, or Vida Nueva, special 65th anniversary edition of the Spanish magazine, just dedicated to Francis' pontificate and an interview with Francis. From that interview, Valli asks Vigano, it appears that Bergoglio, Francis, expected everything but to become Pope. Anything would have been more commonplace to him, but the papacy. The story says something different. That's the call of the question. And Vigano says, I am amazed by Bergoglio's literary gifts. We were talking about this before. I don't know if you'd call them gifts, but I think he means by the loquacity, the floridity of Francis's language, because people that don't want to tell you the truth, they talk around the point. Vigano does some of it too, but I think he is telling us the truth. It's just a European thing. The evocative reenactment of how surprised he felt at his own election does not reconcile with what we know happened at the 2013 conclave, which has also been confided by a cardinal elector who's unable to reveal it publicly. And in presenting himself as a speculum totius humilitatis, a mirror of all humility, he speaks of himself as a, quote, victim of the Holy Spirit and providence. This is a weird phraseology. As if to attribute the misfortune of this pontificate. Oh, and he does put scare quotes around pontificate. That's weird. So I guess he's a whatever. To God himself and not to the maneuvers of both the deep church, through the mafia of St. Gallen and the deep state, through the emails of Podesta and Clinton. Look, I'm not with him. I would not put scare quotes around Francis's pontificate, not just yet anyway. I would not. But to be fair, why in the world would one express surprise at one's own election? Well, the first answer is if you were veritably surprised and you're telling the truth. Sure. But number two, we know that's not the case. We literally know that the way that Francis and his acolytes characterized his election in March of 2013, I remember the day quite well, was historically inaccurate. At least the conditions for the possibility of surprise being unavailability of means, mode of opportunity for something to happen, unlikeliness of it happening, infrequency of precedence, things like that. To achieve actual surprise, those conditions for that possibility of such surprise must be absent. And in Francis's case, we only later, in quiet, dulcet tones, learned or had it reported to us, I think in 2014. Oh, did you know Francis Bergoglio was number 2 at the 2005 conclave? Did you know what happened between the 3rd and 4th scrutinies at the 2005 conclave, which eventually elected Ratzinger? That Francis was seen walking arm in arm with Cardinal Martini. And he had been locked for the first 3 scrutinies, the first 3 votes of that 2005 conclave, with none other than Jorge Mario Bergoglio, this unknown. An unknown doesn't get the second most votes, rivaling the first most votes for those first 3 scrutinies, unless he, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, in 2005, had a special interest lobby called canvassing, which is a late sententiae excommunication if granted by Francis or the Pope. And if it's granted by the Pope, he's late sententiae excommunicated. Well, guess what? Austin Ivory's first edition of the book Great Reformer, Austin Ivory is a biographer of Pope Francis and a huge fan of Pope Francis, did in fact state that Francis gave the verbal and nonverbal nod to the canvassing faction on his own behalf. And he said, well, if the times are necessary, I would do it. You might interest you to know that that book was pulled off the shelf within the first week of its print run. And I have friends that have secured a copy of that first edition. It is real. That's not an urban legend. That sounds like prima facie evidence of what could be a late sententiae excommunication of the Pope. I don't know. I'm just reporting the facts. Vigano goes a bit further, starts calling him Bergoglio, all that stuff. He goes down the rabbit hole further than I'm willing to go. But the point is, take all of that aside. Benedict met with Cardinal Martini, and after that third scrutiny at the 2005 conclave, the fourth scrutiny, all of the St. Gallen Mafia votes were allegedly thrown toward Benedict. To the extent that this is true, seems to evidence some sort of lunchtime agreement. But that's speculation. Nevertheless, in 2013, when Francis actually wins the pontificate, you can't claim that he was this dark horse underdog, right? He was the number 2 at the last vote, and he was young enough to make it happen. You can't claim he was this underdog if that same special interest lobby of St. Gallen mafiosi had been active between 2005 and 2013. And you certainly can't claim surprise at the prevailing of Francis at the ballot in 2013 if you know that they've basically already secured the votes. And all of these seem to be facts that have been well established by independent minds, like my friend Julia Meloni. I haven't talked to Julia in a long time. She kind of left the public life, even on social media, but her book on the St. Gallen Mafia demonstrates this stuff amply. Okay, so what does that mean then? Francis's professed surprise at his election at the 2013 conclave is false. Why would you have false surprise? To concoct the narrative that you did not know you're going to be Pope. What does it mean? That if you knew you're going to be Pope ahead of the time, this is just linear thinking here, it would indicate some conspiracy. Now all of a sudden we're off and running. And these are relatively linear causal connections. So if one or two of these things at the beginning are true, it's hard for the whole set of dominoes not to fall. Now, I'm just saying it because Vigano said it. False surprise, when it's proven false, is actually a very damning kind of proof. Just saying that election was not spontaneous. If the surprise is not spontaneous about the election or the fact, then the fact was not spontaneous either. Okay, now the third element that I thought was important in this Vigano Valley interview was what Francis said in the 65th anniversary edition of Vita Nueva about Vatican III. Why is there not yet Vatican III? So Valli says there's also talk of Vatican III. What do you say? Vigano says yes. A journalist from Vita Nueva provocatively asks, the Synod on Synodality seems to cover everything, from proposals for liturgical renewal to the need for more evangelizing communities, passing through a true preferential option for the poor, a true commitment in terms of integral ecology, and the acceptance of collectives of that Skittles Leviathan. Has it ever been thought of giving it the form of a third Vatican Council? That's the end of the question for Francis. Vigano says it ought to horrify us even to hear the hypothesis that a synod could address such very delicate issues, because synods don't have the magisterial weight of ecumenical councils. Liturgical reform and the evangelization of communities. others completely foreign to the purposes of the church, such as a true preferential option for the poor, a true commitment in terms of, he just lists all those things. I don't want to have to stumble over the third item again. Yet these are the themes being addressed at World Youth Day 2023. All of these woke talking points. With the criminal indoctrination of thousands of young people on the theme of the ecological emergency and woke ideology. And they are the themes repeated obsessively by media, schools, workplace, politics of Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset. My friend was telling me here, I do need to do a show revisiting the basics, the bullet points of Agenda 2030, because it's going to be running your life by 2027 altogether. Also addressed by the Great Reset, both of which are ontologically incompatible with the Catholic religion because they are intrinsically anti-Christic and anti-Christian. Bergoglio's response is very telling to this question about Vatican III. Things are not ripe for a third Vatican Council, and it is not even necessary at this time since Vatican II has not yet begun to be realized. That's troubling. This was very risky and had to be taken into account. But there is always the fear that spreads among us at the hands of the old Catholics, who already at Vatican I called themselves depositories of the true faith. Now, Vigano goes on to talk about how the old Catholics who rejected Vatican I were not even conservatives. They have female priests. It's an inapt analogy. Okay? But I would say this is a dispositive bit of evidence that Francis does believe in the spirit of Vatican II. When you're talking to a Pope-splainer and they're like, spirit of Vatican II people, that's not any of the popes, post-conciliar. No, this is the line again. Things are not ripe for a third Vatican Council, and it is not even necessary at this time since Vatican II has not yet begun to be realized. That is the spirit of Vatican II. That's dummies will say proof text. Don't you just mean proof? That's proof. Proof texting is when you shave off a negatory. Someone says, no, this is not what I believe. And you shave off the no and you say, this is what I believe. A proof text is not the same thing as a proof. They're opposites. This is the proof that he is a Spirit of Vatican II guy. And what Spirit of Vatican II folks are always after is the teleology of revolution, the teleology of bringing about some change in the church that they foreordained, according to the black legend of us trads. So that brings us to the fourth theme addressed by Vigano. The goal of Pope Francis's pontificate. Time magazine once depicted Cardinal Carlo Martini, the leader of the St. Gallen Mafia before he succumbed to Parkinson's disease, as the anti-pope, A-N-T-E pope. That was the title. Clever play on words. A-N-T-E, meaning before. Time magazine knew about something that was going on that most Catholics didn't know about at the time. What did they know about? That he was ushering in change. He was ushering in change that would rock the world and the church. Remember in France, when they were talking about Bergoglio, they're on record, these St. Gallen guys, to get Achille Silvestrini and Martini, I forget which one of them, in a dialogue said, give him 5 or 6 years and he can completely change the face of the church. Well, now he's had twice that. He's had 10 years. And the church is barely still standing. So let's talk about his methodology. I will say this, Steph, you heard me say it. This explanation of the mechanics, how Francis accomplishes the change he does, is exactly what I said he does a year or two into his pontificate. Right? You heard me say that, right, Steph? I was like, this is...
That means yes.
Okay, cool. Listen to how satisfying the methodology explanation by Vigano is here. We have come to understand that Bergoglio's main purpose is to sow division and destroy. He said this was his own goal, by the way. He said, make a mess of the church. That's what he is here to do. I don't know how anyone defends this man. He said that in the first year. His MO is always the same. First of all, he artificially provokes a, quote, debate on issues that cannot be the object of controversy in the church. False debate, made to look spontaneous. They can't be debated since they've already been defined by the magisterium, of course. They're set. Do you want to, let's have a debate on, is 2 and 2 4 or is 2 and 2 5? So he sets up these debates, and it's just like a debate on whether 2 and 2 equals 4 or 5. But most Catholics are kind of moronic. They don't know that 2 and 2 is actually 4. He pits the ultra-progressives, I don't think he meant scare quotes there, truly ultra-progressives, against the conservatives. Center-right losers, right? Center-right losers. If you're in the center-right, you're a loser, by definition. Traditional Catholics, as I explained earlier, he says, have not followed these delusions of the neo-church for a long time, and that is good. Then he makes sure that what he wants to achieve, doctrinal, moral, disciplinary, liturgical change, is proposed by a mediator who appears to be neutral, presenting himself as trying to find a compromise, while in reality he panders to the progressive side. So this is what the African bishops were saying at the Synod on the Family. They're saying, hey, they're changing the rules in the 2015 Synod on the Family, and they're doing it to achieve a foreordained result. Cardinal Sarah said this. It's fake spontaneity. So first, they provoke debate, a fake debate. Next, he makes sure that what he wants to achieve is proposed by a neutral-seeming mediator who's not actually neutral. Then, at this point, Bergoglio from on high, as if discovering only then that there's a question to be clarified. It's never a question to be clarified. Can Catholics commit murder? It's like, no. But they go into it and they're like, well, no, in these extraordinary circumstances, we might actually be able to. You can't. But then he's like, hold on, let's have a debate on whether Catholics can commit murder in such and thus circumstances. The mediator, Vigano, is saying, will always pander to this side and be like, well, hold on, hear him out. He's not saying that this set of circumstances exists frequently or even anywhere in the real world. Maybe they're just hypothetical. It's like a Einstein-Rosen bridge or a wormhole through time. Theoretically, mathematically, it's possible, but it probably doesn't exist in the world. Well, that goes against the nature of being pastoral. If there's this theoretical Einsteinian mathematical possibility that at some place, somewhere in the universe, that'll never happen, a husband and a wife are divorced and they're remarried each and they've had kids and they're remarried, so it would be wrong to tell their new marriage to break up. That doesn't even work. It's not wrong. It's not a marriage. But if it's so implausible that it never even happens, then you're not being pastoral, which proves to you they're lying. So this false mediator presents himself as trying to find a compromise while in reality he panders to the progressives. At this point, Bergoglio from on high, and as if discovering only then that there is a question to be clarified on which an authoritative pronouncement is needed, imposes a change that seems less serious than what the ultra-progressives had requested, but which remains inadmissible for those who are Catholic, who at that point are forced to disobey. And this disobedience is instantly denounced as heresy or schism, even by central rightists, simply by recalling the errors of the old Catholics, or being compared to them. Here lies the most treacherous deception. And then he goes and he shows why old Catholics aren't actually, they're not sort of, they're not based, if incorrect, the way sedevacantists are. They're actually lefties. All that Vigano's describing here is if you want a car for, $10K and it's used, and right now it's marked at $15, you make an offer for $5,000. It's how dumb, bad negotiators negotiate, or in this case, it's how you get gamed if you're a normie, because normies are dumb and are always getting duped. And it's 95% of Catholics, and this is who Francis has to dupe. He knows he's not going to be able to dupe 5 or 10%, like Abe Lincoln said. So he doesn't spend any time on that. It's just, hey, I want this car for 10. They want me to pay 15 now. Instead of going, hey, can I just give you 10 for it? Because they'll split the difference. They'll go, no, 12.5. Let's get out of here. You go, hey, I'll give you 5. And then they'll split the difference between 5 and 15. You wind up with 10. Boom. That is how it is with common people. Cave dwellers, the people in Plato's cave. Most people. I'm saying 90% to be charitable, by the way, folks. I'm being nice. That's how it works, and that's how Francis has operated since the very beginning. People now mostly know it, but it's also kind of weird because people seem to have forgotten it some from the summer of 2018. And that's how he's worked methodologically at every step to achieve every goal of the Sankt Gallen Mafia. There's not a differential diagnosis. Can we just say that? I mean, this is pretty much what I wanted to take away, the 4 themes of this Vigano interview. There's no differential diagnosis for dishonesty. If you're wondering if you can trust someone about something very specific, and this person winds up being shown to have been dishonest on 3 other issues that are maybe conceptually connected to that issue. First off, you could just say they have a dishonest character. They're feigning anything. Don't hang out with people that feign surprise, feign happiness, feign sadness. All of it's manipulative. All of it's a lie. And it means they're not going to be... Someone who's not honest with you will not be honest anytime that they're uncomfortable. Is that the gossip thing? He who gossips with you gossips about you. No, this is different. This is, what's demonstrated by a good friend when you're like, look, tell me the truth. Did you or did you not eat the last piece of cake? If they're like, yeah, I'm embarrassed, but I did. You can trust them, because a person who's going to lie will lie when they have their back to the wall. When you find them lying with their back to the wall, this means, in most cases, this human being will lie to you anytime their back's to the wall. So Francis's dishonesty about something that's relatively small, superficially, like, oh, I was so happy at my election. I was so surprised. I'm a victim of the Holy Spirit, whatever in the hell that means. Well, once you read Julia Maloney's book, Sankt Gallen Mafia, and you're like, there's literally zero chance that he was surprised. It was foreordained, and Julia Maloney brings the receipts and proves it. Then you're like, okay, so all we can establish that's not speculative, as a matter of fact, is he was not surprised. He was saying he was surprised. He is lying about being surprised. Next bit of reasonable speculation. Why was he lying about being surprised? Then you move to all the other false surprises entailed by Francis's methodology, like his goal setting. Why is he claiming to have been surprised by what the bishop said at Family Synod number 1, Family Synod number 2, Amazon Synod in 2019, the Synod on Synodality over the last 3 years? Oh, it's the same reason. There is a reason why he would pretend to be surprised at his election. Because you're not allowed to have conspiracies to be elected. There's a reason why he would feign surprise at the findings of these 4 synods. Family 1, Family 2, Amazon in 2019, Synod on Synodality. Because he has to act like, oh, they're doing things that we never thought were Catholic. I guess I'm a victim of the Holy Spirit too. I'm not going to stand in the way of this holy process, even though the Holy Spirit seems to be endorsing something that we thought before wasn't Catholic. Oh, well, he's the God of surprises. Look up how many times Francis has says God of surprises in this pontificate. That explains the false surprise. It's central to his methodology, the kabuki theater. Foreordained result, pre-drafted document, make it look like some democratic body or the third person of the Blessed Trinity gave it to him, and then he could just stand alongside us as if he's in the audience and go, I'm surprised too, guys, but I'm not going to block the way. That's how the Sankt Gallen Mafia literally said they would work things. They literally said they would work these things in the 1980s when these guys started getting together. They're like, we're going to use false surprise. You got to go read Julia Maloney's book. That's why the false surprise is so indicative of other things. Can we hear that music on the way out? Let's hear some jams.
Oh, it was coming.
Oh, it was, I didn't have to ask, but I'm done. I'm done for today.
You asked me that. That was going to happen.
That. You know who I blame for this? And again, it's a common theme.
Who do you blame?
I blame JP2, right? Didn't he start World Youth Day, or he greatly popular? It's so fake and you know what? It's so fake. It's just for dweebs.
There's a literal clown on stage with a crystal ball. And the teens are going wild over this.
Yeah. These are not the kind of teens that play sports or are popular in school. These are the dweebs that wanted to, in a sort of Catholic way, be like the cool kids that get into trouble. And it doesn't, they're not pulling it off. You can't mix, I love mayo on on a turkey sandwich. I love peanut butter with a jelly sandwich. You can't mix them. Those aren't two elements that mix. World Youth Day, I love a good Catholic youth. I love that we have faithful, holy, trad youth. And I love days. But you can't mix World Youth and day. It's the stupidest, goofiest thing ever. If any of you sent your kids,
Yeah, I was going to say that.
then please, I'd have a word with you. I just don't. I'm really ashamed. If any of you sent your kids to World Youth Day, it is unbecoming of you and your family. I'm trying to say things a little bit more charitably on this channel, but you need to rethink your inks. You need to rethink your priorities. Most of all, you need to rethink your music selections, because you will have... Here we go. God bless you all, parish orphans and retrogrades. Subscribe to this channel, leave a comment about how horrible the music was and how goofy the losers were on stage and off it at World Youth Day. I really hate those guys. God bless you all. Des Vol.